relevant, reliable, and researched. This is Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering leading-edge news and information on today's most beneficial products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
And welcome back to the program. Sterling Fox, joined in studio by the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia, Tony Giventu, back with us. And we are joined tonight by Larry Buttress, the Deputy Executive Officer of the Real Estate Council of British Columbia. And as we ended our last segment, gentlemen, we were talking about the value of communication and how without it, not much successful occurs. And Tony, it's a theme that you cannot return to frequently enough on this program, because unless there is effective communication, all sorts of problems ensue. And usually, and we've had lawyers on the program in the past and will again in the future, and they'll always trace it back to, well, you just didn't talk enough about this detail. So now that you didn't, you find out what happens because of it. And Tony, talk to us a little bit more, and Larry will as well, in terms of communicating. We're talking real estate here, agents and property managers, and that triangle of property managers, agents, and homeowners in a strata environment.
Well, I'll talk about the relationship with the Strata Corporation and the property managers.
Okay.
And then let's get Larry to talk about the relationship with the agent and their buyer. But I think the relationship of communication is essential, and I always sum it up the same way. I kind of live by the policy: if it isn't in writing, I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I need to see it in writing, put it in writing. Let's start from there, and then let's work our relationship out. And I think this is where the relationship between Strata managers and strata councils falls apart quite frequently, is that there are a lot of misunderstandings about what he said, what she said at meetings, expectations that were unrealistic or expectations that simply were never fulfilled, and there's no way of going back to say, well, what did we actually really agree upon, or what did we actually decide? So I think there's a few little steps, and I wrote a few notes for strata councils to just kind of think about a few steps, and one of them is strata councils have to regularly convene council meetings.
Okay.
Don't have a meeting when you think you need to have a meeting because it's a crisis. You need to regularly convene meetings and conduct routine business.
What does the law require a strata council to, how many what sort of frequency of meetings per annum is in the law?
It's in the standard bylaws, which is nothing unless a strata corporation specifically requires it within their bylaws that they must meet monthly or or bi-monthly.
Otherwise, it's an annual general meeting and that's it.
Virtually none of them. However, what you have to understand about the legislation is council doesn't abdicate their responsibility to the manager. When it comes to financial decisions, when it comes to the enforcement of bylaws and the governance of the bylaws, only the strata council can make those decisions. So they have to meet in order to be able to make those decisions, which they execute by majority vote. This is one of the essential reasons why they need regular meetings. Another thing that is very helpful, I'm very surprised frequently when the strata phones and says, we have a problem with our manager. The first question I always say is, well, what's your problem? Can you provide me with a copy of the contract? Never. They almost never can, which is surprising because how do you enforce or negotiate or function in a relationship of a contract if you don't have it and you don't understand the language?
Well, I would think on the other side of that contract is, how do I guarantee I'm going to get paid for doing all this work unless I've got something written down that says I bloody well better be?
Well, that's a different issue, getting paid, but every council member should have a copy of the management contract.
Okay.
Everyone should have a copy of the contract to understand the relationship, understand the roles and responsibilities, understand what you're paying for. Understand what's permitted to be paid for and what fees are collected. Stratas should also, look at it like any contractual relationship. Stratas review their insurance policy annually. They do employee, if they have a resident caretaker, they do employee reviews.
Right.
Review your contracts annually. Do we need more services? Are we getting our services fulfilled? Do we need to negotiate something differently? Set a monthly agenda on your Strata Council meetings that does a mandatory minimum of reviewing the financials. And this doesn't mean that one person on council or the manager says, here's our financial statement and this is where we're at this month. It means that every council member gets a copy of the financial report, copies of the bank statements, and a copy of the reconciliation, because it's council who makes these decisions by majority vote. Also, with that report is going to come a series of collectibles and receivables. So if someone hasn't paid strata fees or special levies, council have to exercise their bylaws in the Act to be able to make decisions around collections.
Okay.
So it's important that council continues to make decisions. I think the last thing that's really important is that council votes on decisions. The decisions are minuted in the meetings, and the outcome or the expectation of those decisions are minuted also. So council have decided that they're going to pursue with an order for sale proceeding against Strata Lot 14, who hasn't paid their Strata fees.
Sure.
Right? The decision is made. The minutes show that the Strata manager has been instructed to send a demand letter to that person, and then on day 21, if there is no response, the Strata council have decided that they will proceed with filing a lien. These are lawful instructions that really help to facilitate the relationship between the Strata and the manager. The manager also needs lawful instructions to do these things. And so it's important to have these decisions actually executed by council and make your minutes clear about what decisions you made and who has instructions. It goes a long way to solving a lot of problems in the relationship.
Can a good property management company retained by a Strata council actually, beyond, you know, keeping the bushes trimmed and the paint cleaned and all, can they, and looking after the books in some cases, can they also advise a Strata council on how to conduct business properly and be a better Strata council? Or is that, Larry, a property management company overstepping its legal bounds?
I don't think it's a Strata property management company overstepping its bounds. I think that, you know, when you think about the relationship of agency principal, the agent is supposed to be the trusted advisor with special expertise.
Exactly.
That provides information to the principal so that the principal can make informed decisions. That's the relationship that we are always trying to promote. The licensee being a source of information that assists their principal to make informed decisions. Now, that's not to suggest that a real estate licensee is an expert on all matters.
Right.
None of us are. So one of our rules requires a real estate licensee, when they are dealing with an issue with their principal where they don't have any particular expertise, to suggest to that principal that they get independent advice. So whether in a Strata management situation we're talking about advice from a lawyer, advice from an accountant, advice from an engineer, whoever it may be, we do not want or expect a licensee to overstep their bound of expertise, but we do expect them to be an information provider.
And Tony, based on your experience, are property management companies good advisors, or are they more likely to be people who take care of the trees and the paint and the lawns and not bother with advising a Strata council on greater efficiencies?
One of the things that I find troubling about the relationship sometimes is that the contract itself will actually say that the manager will provide advice or direction on the legislation or the act. That's frequently in many of the contracts, and yet they fail to do that. So that's a contractual problem. And so Strata councils retain and rely upon them for their service and their expertise, which is an indication of how much more we have to go with respects to education and increasing standards of education and qualifications and moving forward with the industry. We have a long way to go yet. We started out with a licensing regime in 2006. We've seen a huge change. We've seen certainly better circumstances. There are still some problems out there, and we have quite a ways to go with education and standards.
And one of the best vehicles for educating the consumer and the professional alike in this age is, of course, the Internet. And both your agencies, Larry Buttress and the Real Estate Council of British Columbia, has an outstanding website in which any consumer anywhere in the province can go and do the frequently asked questions and poke around and really get well informed or better informed. That, combined with CHOA, CHOA.bc.ca, the Condominium Homeowners Association website, with those two, between those two, especially if you're just dabbling and you want to know more, and gee, do I even want to go in this direction any further than dabbling? Two excellent websites. The proper web address of the Real Estate Council's website, Larry, please.
www.recbc.ca.
Again, friends, that's RECBC, Real Estate Council of British Columbia, RECBC.ca, Larry?
Correct.
Okay, and CHOA, CHOA, condominium.bc.ca for the Condominium Homeowners Association. That's our program for tonight. Between now and the next time, feel free to visit those websites, and I think you're going to find yourself making more visits than you thought you were, because they are both outstanding. Larry Buttress, thanks so much, sir. Appreciate your joining us, and great to meet you. Hopefully you'll come back sometime.
Thanks. My pleasure, Sterling.
Tony, see you next time.
Always a great show.